You probably didn't even notice when it happened. One day, self became a brand. The quiet act of existing turned into a performance. And somewhere between selfies and spiritual quotes, humanity started confusing consciousness with Wi-Fi signal. Alan Watts would have laughed first, then sighed. Because the man who once said trying, to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth, would now see a billion mouths chewing on mirrors, starving for validation. The ego didn't just grow, it evolved. It learned SEO. It studied algorithms. It became fluent in dopamine. It discovered that the fastest way to feel infinite is to be seen, even if it's only for 3 seconds on a screen. We live in a world where enlightenment has a comment section, and inner peace depends on engagement rate. People chant, be yourself, but only if that self fits the trending template. Every emotion now needs a filter, every thought a thumbnail, every silence a soundtrack. Watts once tried to wake the West from the illusion of separateness. Now the illusion wears ring lights and quotes him without context. They take his words, "You are the universe experiencing itself," and use them to sell meditation apps, manifestation ebooks, and $49.99 cosmic coaching sessions. The irony, the very ego he tried to help dissolve, monetize the message. He'd look at today's spiritual influencers and grin, not out of mockery but recognition. Because ego has always been clever, now it just has better lighting. Scroll long enough and you'll meet entire armies of awakened avatars, all fighting over who's more humble. Humility has never been louder. Everyone's letting go while desperately clinging to visibility. Everyone's surrendering while curating their image of surrender. And you, sitting there, half amused, half tired, you feel it too. That subtle exhaustion of trying to keep up with Enlightenment 2.0. The more you try to be someone who doesn't care, the more you feed the thing you're trying to transcend. Alan once warned, the more we struggle for life, the less we live. And now, the digital ego struggles for proof of life every second. Likes, views, reactions, anything to feel real. But consciousness doesn't need applause. It needs presence. Imagine if Watts had a YouTube channel today. He'd probably start every video the same way. Hello, my dear subscribers. I have nothing to sell you. Please, unsubscribe immediately. And then he'd smile that mischievous smile, the kind that disarms pretense, and keep talking until the algorithm gave up trying to categorize him. Because you can't box what doesn't seek to be boxed, and you can't monetize a man who found freedom in not needing to be followed. Still, here we are, all of us, surfing the collective ego wave, pretending we're above the current while secretly hoping to go viral. Watts would remind us gently, you're not in the universe, you are the universe. And the universe doesn't need validation. But tell that to the part of you counting likes. Tell that to the voice rehearsing humility in front of the mirror. Tell that to the algorithm whispering, post again. They might forget you. The ego went viral because it found the perfect host. Us, our attention, our boredom, our hunger to matter. And yet, there's something oddly beautiful about it too. Because behind every exaggerated self, every curated image, every desperate attempt to be seen, there's still the same silent spark Alan tried to point to all along. The awareness watching the performance. It never left. It just learned to scroll. Let's be honest. The ego didn't need social media to exist. It just needed better Wi-Fi. What was once confined to dinner, parties and philosophical debates has now gone global, 1080p and monetized. Alan Watts would say it with that soft, British humor that made people laugh before they realized he'd just dismantled their entire worldview. He'd probably raise an eyebrow and murmur, so now you've made the illusion collaborative, because that's what we've done. We built a network of mirrors, and then we called it connection. Every click, every share, every hot take is a little spark in the great fire of self-importance, and we warm ourselves around it, briefly, intensely, until the fire dies. And we need another view, another meaningful post about authenticity. It's poetic, in a tragicomic way. Humanity's oldest trap, ego, has evolved into its most collective version yet. We're not just feeding our own egos anymore, we're feeding each other's, in a feedback loop so loud that silence feels awkward. You can almost hear Alan chuckle. The problem with the ego isn't that it's wrong, it's that it thinks it's permanent. Now permanence has a handle, a hashtag, and a sponsorship deal. The irony is, the pursuit of self-expression, something meant to free us, has become a performance prison. Every act of individuality passes through the same filters of trend and relevance. Even rebellion now has a brand kit. When Watts spoke about the illusion of the separate self, He wasn't trying to erase individuality. He was pointing to its fluid nature. The self, he said, is like a whirlpool in the river, distinct, visible, yet inseparable from the water around it. But try selling that metaphor on TikTok, because no one wants to be the river anymore. Everyone wants to be the wave that gets the most replay value. We forgot that awareness doesn't compete. It simply is. If Alan were alive today, he'd watch the spiritual marketplace with equal parts curiosity and heartbreak. He'd see gurus selling shortcuts to enlightenment with the urgency of flash sales. He'd scroll through comment sections filled with people arguing about whose version of truth is truer, and he'd probably just whisper, "You're all arguing about the reflection, not the water." He would have loved the paradox. Millions searching for transcendence inside a system designed to keep them scrolling. That's not evil. It's just exquisitely human. Watts never demonized humanity's confusion. He saw it as part of the cosmic game. Lila, the divine play. But he warned that when the play forgets it's a play, suffering begins. And here we are, halfway through Act 3, clutching our phones like sacred relics, praying that someone sees us. The ego didn't just go viral, it professionalized. It built personal brands out of trauma, spiritualized productivity, and turned self-awareness into a content pillar. Even shadow work got merch. And yet, amid all this noise, something real still flickers. Because even the loudest ego needs quiet sometimes. Even the influencer of self-realization eventually looks in the mirror and whispers, "Who am I trying to convince?" Watts believed that question, sincerely asked, is the doorway. The moment the performance pauses, the second before laughter, before awakening. Not the kind of awakening you can post about, but the one that feels like exhaling after lifetimes of holding your breath. That's the place where awareness remembers itself. And the cosmic joke? That moment never trends, because truth doesn't need an audience. Here's the thing Alan Watts understood better than most. When you try to kill the ego, you just give it another job title. We've made self-transcendence the new competition. People no longer want to be rich. They want to be enlightened first. They want the blue check of the awakened. They want to win detachment. And that, Alan would say, is the most egoic thing of all. He'd laugh, and that deep, knowing laugh that said, "Ah, there you are," caught in the net again. Because Watts didn't see ego as an enemy. He saw it as a tool, a mask, a useful illusion for navigating the play. But now the mask refuses to come off. It's become interactive, customizable, and dangerously convincing. The viral ego is not just personal, it's systemic. It's built into the way we measure success, identity, even spirituality. Our digital architecture rewards loudness, not depth. So we curate depth. We simulate it. We hashtag it. We sell the idea of being above it all, while begging the algorithm to notice. The real virus isn't ego itself. It's the belief that we are the ego. That this performance of self, digital, polished, shareable, is who we truly are. Alan would look around today's world and see billions of people desperately trying to keep their characters alive, not realizing that the character is a story the universe told itself for fun. And if the story's meant to evolve, maybe the next plot twist is surrender. Not the Instagram kind, but the kind that feels like diving into the unknown without needing to film it. Watts said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself." Imagine that for a second. The infinite peeking through your eyes, curious about what it feels like to be you. And now imagine the infinite sighing because the aperture keeps checking notifications. The tragedy and beauty of our time is that the awareness Alan spoke of still exists, but it's buried under constant stimulation, numbed by choice overload. We've mistaken movement for meaning, and yet, under all the noise, something ancient still listens. That's where he'd guide us back. Not to silence as an aesthetic, but as an act of rebellion. Because nothing confuses the ego like quiet. Quiet is the one thing it can't monetize. So what would Alan Watts say to this era of viral self-obsession? Probably something mischievous like, "Congratulations, you finally managed to make God go viral." And then, after the laughter settled, he'd remind us, "But remember, you're laughing at your own reflection." See, Watts wasn't cynical about humanity. He was enchanted by it. He saw our madness as divine theater. He believed that even delusion serves the dance. Because the game of awakening needs something to wake from. So maybe the ego's virality is part of the curriculum. Maybe we're just passing through the phase where the collective self gets so inflated it finally pops. And in the quiet after the pop, we remember what was always there. What if the next evolution isn't transcendence, but integration? Not killing the ego, not worshipping it, but dancing with it, aware of the choreography. Because ego is not evil, it's just loud when it's scared. And the modern world has given it infinite megaphones. But the solution isn't muting the world. It's tuning our inner frequency. The moment you stop performing long enough to actually feel, you realize the ego isn't an obstacle to enlightenment. It's the fuel that burns away when truth ignites. Imagine scrolling one day and seeing a video titled, "Stop Trying to Be Spiritual." And instead of preaching, it just shows someone sitting quietly, eyes open, smiling. No words, just being. That clip would probably get 10 views, but one of them might change everything. Because awareness doesn't need to trend. It just needs to be remembered. Alan Watts knew that consciousness plays hide and seek. The universe hides as you, forgets it's divine. Then one day, in the middle of your third coffee and 47th scroll, you feel it, that pulse of realness. That tiny moment where you stop chasing meaning and simply exist. That's it. That's the cosmic joke. You were the thing you were searching for the whole time. So when we say the ego went viral, maybe we should also say, awareness is quietly contagious too. Every time you choose presence over performance, someone else watching feels permission to do the same. Every moment you laugh at your own seriousness, the collective tension loosens just a little. Watts might remind us that laughter is enlightenment in disguise. It's the sound of illusion cracking open. So laugh, not the performative kind, but the one that shakes your bones and lets reality breathe. Laugh at the seriousness, at the chase, at the idea that truth could ever fit in a tweet. And in that laughter, notice something simple. You're free, if only for a heartbeat. That's the space Alan called the still point, where life lives you, not the other way around. Where the viral ego fades into background static, and what remains is the same awareness that existed before your first thought and will remain after your last upload. So maybe it's not about deleting your profiles or renouncing technology. Maybe it's about remembering that you were never just the profile. You are the screen and the light behind it, the observer behind the observer, the silence that keeps playing even when the sound cuts out. In the end, Alan's voice would probably soften, as it always did after laughter. Relax, you can't fall out of the universe. That's the cure to the viral ego. Not judgment, not escape, but remembering you were never separate in the first place. The show keeps going, yes, but now you know it's a show. And that changes everything. So scroll if you must, post if you wish. Just don't forget to look up sometimes and laugh with the stars. Because awareness is still trending, quietly, eternally, under every heartbeat that dares to be real. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with us. This is Human Wave, where awakened minds rise into a life of wholeness and fulfillment.